This is Sunny Gill interviewing Robin Giorno on the 14th of November 2017. Robin was born in France, Paris in 1980. Hello, Robin.
Hi.
Oh, yeah. So tell me a bit about your family background.
Okay, well, I was born in Paris from two parents that were French. My dad was born in Tunisia, my mother in Algeria, that were both kind of French colonies, so to speak. And yeah, they moved to France, met each other there, and had my sister, then me.
What was the reason for your parents moving to France?
Basically, the situation changed where Algeria decolonized completely, became independent, and Tunisia as well. I can't give you the exact details. Tunisia was slightly different. It wasn't an actual colony. It was like a protectorate thing or something. But essentially, the same thing happened where it was kind of changing, and they kind of repatriated to France.
So tell me a bit about your childhood.
Well, I was born. So I was born in Paris. Left shortly after that. My dad was working for a petrol company, like as an engineer, and so we moved to Abu Dhabi in the early days of Abu Dhabi for a bit. Then a year in London, a few years in Scotland, and I came back to Paris when I was 7, and then stayed there. Managed to get into this international school that my parents wanted to put us in, and so I managed to keep speaking English because I'd learnt obviously in Scotland, and did that until I was 18. And I got my back, which is the end of year kind of A-levels equivalent, and came to England to study.
How was the international school in France for you?
It was good. It was like my parents struggled a little bit to get us in there because we were French. Most people had like a foreign parent. Well, from whatever country they were from. I had one parent that was French, and another parent from another country, kind of thing was the general scenario. But managed to get in there, and it was good because as a child it kept me because I'd grown up, gone to school in England in English speaking countries. I found it quite hard at first to kind of adapt to the French ways because it's a whole I spoke French to my parents kind of thing, but not to kids my age, so it was kind of a bit weird. So that was it was nice to have the kind of English sides there still. And then then it was it was a good school. It was happy days.
Are there any fond memories of the primary school?
Well, I mean, it was all really fun, man. I had a really good it was a fun school. It was what can I say? It was quite nice because I think a lot of kids had a kind of similar kind of background in that, and although it was international, it was a very kind of Western international kind of thing. So I had a lot of European people and kind of Americans. Like there's different kind of national sections, if you like. So the main body was like your normal French curriculum, and then there was a few hours a week that was your what they call national curriculum, so which depended on which national group you were in. So I was in the British one. There's also an American one, a German one, Swedish, Portuguese, Spanish. But it was mostly a more kind of, Western kind of international. It wasn't a global international. It was a very
Westernized.
Yeah.
How did was the school similar to your environment at home?
How do you mean?
The customs and the food, even the
Yeah, I
speaking,
mean,
the
what was quite nice
mannerisms.
with the school really is that the main part of the day you'd be in the French class, which had all the different national people in it. So I had friends from kind of all over Europe, and so it's quite nice going to people's houses, and you'd eat different food, different kind of vibes. Although, like I said, it was all very kind of like European kind of thing. It's still get different kind of cultures, slightly different angles on stuff. So yeah, that was nice in that sense.
Can you paint me a picture of your environment back home when you was living in Paris?
Yeah, it was. So it wasn't in Paris. Yeah, I live in kind of west kind of suburbs kind of thing. So it was kind of quieter than Paris, more kind of, it was a countryside, but it's like, you know, more kind of spread out a bit. And yeah, lived in a little housing estate thing, little residential place with loads of other kids. It's quite, I think what was different for a lot of other children is that I didn't go to school with any of these guys that I lived close to, because the school was kind of special. People kind of came from different places and all gathered in that school rather than just going to your local school. So it meant that it was a really different kind of, I had my friends that I'd play with at home kind of thing, and then my friends from school was like a different thing, you know what I mean? Although when you were a bit older, it kind of all, you know, people can travel a bit more easily, kind of merged a bit more. And yeah, that was it. Just did a lot of skateboarding and just hanging around on the bikes and building ramps.
Wicked.
That was a good part of it.
How did you find moving through all the different countries that you lived before you went to the primary school? How was that experience for you?
It was okay. I mean, I was quite little, so I think it's a lot easier to do that because your main nucleus is really your family. So I had my older sister, who was like my constant kind of friend throughout it. So that any time we moved, I still had her kind of thing. Because obviously all your friends and all that changed. But when you're little, it's not like when you're a teenager and you make friends that are really like real friends, you know what I mean? It's just like people you play with at school, and it, you know. So it was a bit sad every time like moving, but it's kind of all right.
Got your sister.
Yeah, that's it. So and my sister was like, you know, got on well and kind of only 2 years older than me, but you know, she looked after me good and all that. She's like, so that was kind of my constant, you know what I mean? My constants, I suppose.
Are there any particular subjects in primary school which you enjoyed the most?
In primary school, I don't know really. Primary school was all. I didn't really feel like it was different subjects almost. You know what I mean? It was all like school in it. So is that in playtime? I don't know.
How was building ramps and skateboarding in France? Was there much of a scene or a community there which you were a part of?
To a point, I mean, the fact that I was in an international school also helped with that. So I had like American friends and stuff that were well into it, and they'd get like, you know, stuff would come to America, would start in America, then go to England, then go to France kind of thing. So like whether it was film or skateboarding equipment, stuff like that. Like I remember waiting for my dad to go on this business trip to America, and he brought me back like trucks and wheels and stuff for my skateboard, because it was like a fraction of the price of what it was in France. And so yeah, I think that kind of helped to get on that vibe, you know what I mean? And rollerblading and stuff, like I had rollerblades, you know, way like through the American connection, you know what I mean? So in that sense, yeah, that was pretty cool. I kind of influenced it.
What was the music scene like, or was you part of any music scene?
Well, yeah. I mean, again, I think the fact that I was in that school kind of pushed it a bit more towards like we were into kind of rock and kind of heavy metal and stuff like that, and which there was a scene for that in France. But yeah, like anything like French hip hop and stuff, weren't really into at the time. Wasn't really a thing. We're more into like guitars and you know what I mean, that kind of vibe.
So you migrated to Birmingham in 1998?
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, so that was just after I finished school, basically after I finished my bac, and through the you know, British section connection kind of thing, we had tutors there that were kind of helping us with the NCAS application and all this kind of stuff, and really pushing us to move away, you know, to England to study. They were really kind of encouraging that, which, you know, was welcome, because you know, at that age it's kind of nice to leave. And had I stayed in France and studied there, I would have probably just stayed with my parents for a bit longer, etc., and it would have been a different experience altogether, I think.
What were the circumstances for migrating to Brum then, in particular?
Man, it was totally random, you know. I really didn't mean to. I had no idea about Brum at all. What happened is I wanted to go to Bristol or to there's some, I can't remember which university it was now, in London as well, because I wanted to do electronic engineering. They both had good reputations, but I got conditional offers for both that, and I didn't meet either. So I ended up having to call universities up for clearance at the end of the season kind of thing, just before it all started. And Birmingham said, all right, I mean, they said, well, you're not very good at math, but you're French, and we need more foreign people.
Okay.
So that was my ticket into the university, really.
Mm.
It's not because I was good at science or anything.
In French.
Yeah. I mean, it's a
How-
bit of positive discrimination there, you know what I mean?
Beneficial.
Yeah.
How did you feel migrating at 18 then to
It was pretty crazy, to be honest, like, especially because I had no idea, like, it's not, I didn't know even, I had to look it up the day before I left. I was like, where is Birmingham anyway on a map, you know what I mean? Never seen it before, never really knew anything about it. And then my English friends were like, whoa, Birmingham's rough, like, you keep getting in trouble here, but wait till you get there, you'll get beaten up all the time. And I was like, ah. But really, and also, yeah, when I arrived, it was a bit, it was a bit brutal, really. Because obviously, culturally, it's really similar to France in a lot of ways. But then when you're actually there in reality, and also I came like through the train from the airport, so you go through this like little industrial part where it's all like post-industrial, I should say, that's all run down, and it was raining, it was grey, and I hadn't slept much the night before, and I like, I'm in my big bag with my one pan and stuff, like, you know what I mean? It's like proper move, you know what I mean?
what's a one pan?
Like one actual pan to cook with,
Oh,
and
literally.
one spoon, and like, you know what I mean? That's like just your basic survival kit.
Was there many differences or similarities when you first arrived from back home?
I mean, it was a bit. When I first arrived, my first week was the induction course for international students that the university organises. So basically, it was it's a week before the Freshers' Week, and they got all the new international students to come, and they all stay in this one hall of residence, and this activities, and they help you sort out your accommodation. Certain countries need like police registrations and stuff like that. Anyway, all that kind of stuff, and just to meet people that are in the same kind of situation as you. So I met loads of international people, you know what I mean? So it was a little bit like my school in a way, like the first kind of week. And then because I'd come in through so late to university, I didn't think I had a place in halls like as a normal first year, so I ended up staying with some Erasmus students that were all a bit older and that were all French, and so my first year in Birmingham I was still a little bit isolated from, because of being in that group and being a bit removed from the university runnings kind of thing. And also we lived in Moseley and everybody else was in Selly Oak near the university, so yeah, the first year was a bit tricky to adapt, really.
Other than a pan and a spoon, what else did you bring with you?
Just clothes, CDs, and basic CD collection, and just little things like that. Obviously I was going to go back at Christmas, at the latest. I think I even went back before that maybe. But yeah, I just had my stuff, like, stuff to live, and Funny thing actually is I opened my bag and there's a big box of condoms there that my mum has slipped in, like, you know what I mean? She hadn't said anything about it.
Stay safe.
Yeah.
So, as well as the people you lived with when you first came here,
Yeah.
was there much of a French community or many French people?
Not really, no. The community, for us at that time, well, for me being with these Erasmus students, was very much an Erasmus kind of community that would get to meet each other because of this induction course they had. And most of them, well, here for a year really. So there was that kind of scene where it was there was Erasmus parties kind of thing, where again it was a lot of Spanish and, French and Italian people mainly, I suppose. So yeah, for the first year it was more that kind of thing. It's only my second year when I moved in with my Greek friend, who was, a bit more sociable than me. And so he'd met more kind of people that were actually staying on, and, so that totally changed as well. Like, and then I was in a shared house with English people and that were going to uni as well, and I got a bit more integrated in the kind of thing, I mean, the life here and the university as well,
How did you find the course?
The course itself,
Mm.
yeah, it was all right, man. It was good. It's interesting, like, you know what I mean.
Outside of studying in Birmingham when you came here, what
Yeah.
else would you get up to?
Well, in my first year, not much really. So it was a bit different. Not depressing, but it was a bit, a bit boring. But in my second year, I met all the people that lived in Moseley. Basically, there was a good little scene here, and there was loads of parties and house parties. And well, some of these guys ended up starting Gibbering Records, which was the record shop in Moseley for a while, and who then went on to starting Shambhala Festival and all that, which is a big festival now. And so from I met them and that group, it all completely changed my life, you know what I mean? And it was just like, just loads of parties, loads of hanging out, and yeah, got more into DJing, like built the record collection because they were always organising parties, and that was kind of the beginning of my life in England in a way, a year later.
Did you bring with you anything from back in France, like non-physically, like any
When I came here,
and any food or?
I always
like
brought food.
anything
You got to bring food back when you go to France, especially in those days. It's not like now where, everything's distributed widely. At the time, it was proper, like, yeah, it's different, man. You can get a cup of coffee in England. It's not even that long ago, but, you know what I mean? It was like, it was really different, and really did get to miss stuff from home, definitely. Which is less the case now. Because I can go to Sainsbury's and buy most of the stuff I can buy in French supermarkets, you know what I mean? 'Cause it's big distribution. So yeah.
How was working and like partying working in the record shop and partying with more
That was
people
great,
from
man.
Brum?
Like sometimes when you read magazines and you read about these bands and they're like, oh yeah, and back in the days there was this and all this was happening, and it was really that kind of time, for me. Like looking back at it now, it was really bubbling. We had this kind of, the record shop was kind of a bit of a hub for loads of local DJs, and everyone would just come in and hang out really and drink coffees. Not necessarily buy records, which is why, it had to shut eventually. But yeah, but for a good while it was, it was like a proper hub. And so like getting in there and, getting involved, meeting loads of people, talking about music, getting records for the wholesale price. You know what I mean? It's a good time.
How old would you have been during this time?
Well, I came when I was 18, so I suppose the record shop was probably about 21, something like that, 2021. I think roughly 2001 is when we started doing the regular nights, so it was all around that time. It's about 16 years ago.
But after the record shop, what sort of employment or work did you have?
Well, by then, basically, 'cause at the same time, I was only part-time in the record shop, so I was also just starting my own little businesses and things. So I was doing like my DJing, recording stuff in the studio, and just little bits and pieces as well, like here and there. I was working, I worked for the university quite a while as well, doing that same induction course, but as an organizer kind of thing. And I was even, through I was doing that, I had a little thing on the side doing helping people find houses, and because it was part of the job in a way, but a lot of people, the general idea was when you were working in the induction course was to get people to live in Selly Oak, but really Borsal Heath, I'd lived in Borsal Heath the whole time, and I was like, you know what, get a loads bigger house, cheaper rent, just have to walk 10 minutes extra and you're good. And so basically I was helping people out, and I had some landlord friends as well, so that was like my little hustle on the side.
How has Borsal Heath been like living?
Oh, it's great, man. I really liked it from when I first moved here, because it's close to Moseley. It wasn't so like anal Moseley in the days as well. It was a lot more kind of hippie-ish and cool, you know what I mean? And so yeah, living here was really great. And when I moved in, it was shortly after it had kind of been cleared out from all the prostitution and all this. So it was kind of like, it's like a new area. People starting to move here. It was good, man. I really liked it. Especially when you compare it to Selly Oak, where it was pretty rough, man, you know what I mean? Because it was like all the students, so you go out on a Friday, everybody's vomiting everywhere, you know what I mean? All the houses are getting broken into all the time because it's like bare students with like computers and TVs in each room, you know what I mean? And I was just like, I can't live there, man. And rats everywhere. Not that, well, okay, maybe the rats is a bad example. But yeah, it was just like, I really liked it here. and like we had so much space compared to our friends in Selyoke, and so we threw the best parties, man. You know what I mean? Like full house parties, with like 2-3 sound systems in the garden area. And it's like proper parties, man.
Was that something that you had an interest in back in France?
To a point. I mean, it kind of changed a lot. Like I was always into DJing and stuff like that. Like when I was younger, I had like a little mobile disco thing going. You know what I mean? Birthday parties and stuff. It's a lot more mainstream. And but then coming to England, I really like got into reggae and all that, and started collecting vinyl more, and so getting a bit more on that kind of side of the DJing thing. So what was the question again?
Do you need to pause it?
So describe to me the environment when you came to Birmingham.
So the change between arriving, well, yeah, like I said, the first thing was I had no idea. All I knew is my friend told me it was well rough, man. That's all I knew about Birmingham, and you know it was true. When I arrived, you know, it looked rough. We're saying post-industrial, but it was more post-apocalyptic, really. You know what I mean? It was like, it was grey, it was raining, and also what I hadn't really, because I hadn't really prepared for this whole thing. I just got stuff, and you know, it all went a bit fast. And the next day I was leaving. You know what I mean? And before that, I was partying with my friends because I was going to leave, so I never really had time to really look into it. So yeah, it was a bit of a shock basically getting here and seeing that. I hadn't realised that the induction course thing for international students was so well organised that they had a team of people waiting for you there that would take you in the bus from the airport straight to the place. And I just like, you know what I mean, hustled my own way there, found a train, got a ticket, you know what I mean, got to university station, which is like so far from where I needed to go, and then I had this little map and I was walking with my bag until I got there, and they're like, oh, have you come on the bus? I was like, no, man, come on the train by myself. So yeah, that was a bit but yeah, I think more that, and then just like getting to this the halls of residence. They've just done them up now, but at the time it was pretty rough. The halls of residences as well. It's like really old building, man, with like a squeaky bed and a mirror that's kind of, you know, a small little sink, and yeah, it was a bit rough, man, in that sense.
How comfortable were you staying there?
Well, it was okay. It was okay. I had to force myself to go downstairs and, like, you know, mingle, because that's kind of the point of it. Because yeah, I suppose it was. Yeah, it's just that little. You know what I mean? It's just a big change. You know, when you're 18 and that. I hadn't really lived away before. So yeah, but on the plus side, everybody calls you Bab and Love. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, yeah, that kind of nice thing about it. But I suppose you've got to find coping mechanisms. You know what I mean? When the environment's that rough, you have to soften it up somehow. And I think that's why, you know, Brummies are quite friendly overall. Or in the north of England in general, they can, you know, without, you know, jumping to stereotypes or anything.
What were the main cultural differences you found?
It's difficult to point out on the, you know, because it's more subtle things really that I don't think, you know, arriving there was that clear what the difference is, apart from, you know, physically the environment and that, the weather and the buildings. Like, I think it took a while to kind of, you know, feel out what differences are, and that, you know, just little things like conversations with people. Like, I found I had to be a bit careful of not getting carried away too much when I had, you know, discussions with people, or not arguments, but, you know, like when you discuss stuff. And you know, English people can be really kind of polite and soft-spoken and get a bit offended if you, like, raise your voice. Whereas, you know, say in France, especially in the south, like when my grandparents live in that, people get carried away and they shout at each other, but it's not a bad thing, you know what I mean? It's just enthusiasm. So I suppose that's little things like that, you know what I mean? You kind of notice that it's not exactly the same. And yeah.
How did you find the differences in food and cuisine?
Well, it was a bit harsh, but then at the same time, you know, I lived in a house, so I cooked food. Well, I had to learn really to cook food. My mum, when I left, made me a whole little ring binder of recipes that she'd written out and photocopied stuff that she made. You know what I mean? So I had that as my little arsenal to, you know what I mean, to fight the food culture. But, you know, it's all right. I mean, I'm really open-minded with food. I like all sorts of stuff. I get good curries here. Like, I had a curry in Paris the other day with a friend, and I was so disappointed. I was like, you know what I mean, this isn't how you're supposed to make it. So, yeah, things like that. But overall, it's, you know, it's cool. And especially now that, you know, like 15, 17 years down the line, it's a lot more, you know, kind of, it's different. It's kind of, you know, developed a lot. Like, all the Sunday newspapers have got like a food complement on it. Everybody's talking about diets, and, you know, I think it's like a global thing now. So, yeah, smooth is out.
Is there a particular dish from back home which you'd like to see here?
Not really, man. That's the nice thing about going home. You know what I mean? So I go home, and because even cooking stuff like some of those recipes in England, you might not get exactly the same ingredients, so it's always going to be slightly different. You know what I mean? But so now I think it's, yeah. I'm not really like that. You know, I haven't got like set food that, you know, I quite like eating different things, and yeah.
2 eggs.
2 eggs, yeah. Or one. Because, yeah. Sorry, I was going to make a terrible joke. No, it's just going to leave it. Let's not make any.
So after the record shop, where did you work? Or
Well, then I was just self-employed, really, from then, kind of thing. So kind of worked into it. I had, I took over the CD duplication business that we're doing as a kind of collaboration with the record shop kind of thing. So I ended up buying out that, so I was just doing it by myself. And then, yeah, just the DJing and organising events. Like, I was organising loads of events at the time. So I had obviously the Mondays has always been there from when I started. But then we did, like, at least 2 kind of major events in the month, and then the odd other thing as well, kind of thing. So yeah, that was my main thing. And then obviously got involved with Shambhala a bit later as well. So basically from getting into the music thing with gibbering and that, I kind of just ended up doing that, really.
the regular Monday nights, which were these? What were these?
Yeah, we haven't actually mentioned these. I'm talking about, like, yeah, everybody's supposed to know. So yeah, basically from one day when I went into the record shop, before I actually worked there, my friend who was there was like, "Oh, you play records, you've got reggae records," and my friend's doing a reggae night down the road because they just started this thing in the pub. And so yeah, I started going there, and we made it into regular nights, and you know, I've been doing it in Moseley ever since, every Monday, pretty much, with the odd little, you know, couple of weeks here and there, but yeah. So that's been the kind of my constant thing that's kept me. It's allowed me to do a lot of networking and keeping the, you know, the DJing thing regular, basically, with, you know, there's a regular income and a regular exposure, you know what I mean? And then everything else kind of came out of that. So we got the band later, decided to make a band with the same guy I was DJing with, and yeah, all kind of escalated from there, pretty much.
Did that impact your experience of living in Birmingham?
Yeah, definitely. I think, like, getting into the DJing and into reggae in particular as well, like, kind of opened up a whole different world of stuff as well. I met the guys that used to run what was called the Unit at the time, so like a little kind of blues dance party thing in a warehouse where they had reggae every weekend, and on Thursdays as well, people would go there just to hang out. More the closer kind of crew of it. So that's when I got practicing my DJing. That was like my first time when I got dropped, like, for a few weeks, where I was like replacing the main DJ there, which was like kind of my first, you know, proper DJing kind of experience, like deep end, which wasn't easy as well, because it was like kind of a mixed crowd. It was a bit ghetto, and it was and nobody knew me, and they were like, you know, who are you? Where's the DJ? You know what I mean? It's a bit hard at first, but, you know, but moving into those circles, it kind of really helped my kind of confidence and stuff as well, and open that whole side of, because the great thing about Birmingham, if you're into reggae, is that there's loads of Jamaican people here, and so the reggae is really part of the, you know, part of the culture, not just for the Jamaicans, but like just because of that influence, and, you know, it's a good place for reggae. And I couldn't go back to France now and do the same thing. from there it wouldn't be possible just because it's the wrong people. You know what I mean?
What was the transition like into forming a band then?
Basically, it was pretty natural, really, because what we were doing is I started producing as well on the computer, and that because it was just about that time that you could actually start recording really affordably at home. You know what I mean? And so I'd had like kind of computer instrumentals and stuff, and we had singers come on the sound system and sing, and so it just made sense to kind of bring it further and get an actual backing band rather than just play backing tracks for people. You know what I mean? And Damon, who I was DJing with, was well involved in the music community in Moseley, and he had a band called Munch Break at the time. And basically we got a few musicians from there and a few other people, got a band together. Originally we were just kind of practicing just for fun. And one thing led to the next. I recorded one song once which was live instruments, based on a drum track that Damon had given me, and I just played the other instruments on top kind of thing. And we met this next guy who was like, you really need to get into this competition that they're doing, you just need 3 songs. And we're like, we haven't got a band and we've only got 1 song, you know what I mean? But then he was doing some sound engineering course, so we ended up all going to the studio with some friends, and just jamming out 3 tunes and not entering the competition in the end. But, that was the beginning of the band kind of thing. And then one day in 2006 it was, so it's quite a few years later, we just set a date, basically said, okay, this is the first gig, and so then we just had to get a set together. You know what I mean? And that was the beginning of that, really.
Are there any particular places or in Brum which you like to play at?
Well, now I think Hare and Hound is always a good place. We're doing events there monthly for a while. Then it got a bit too much just in terms of promoting events all the time is quite long and stressful. But that's still a great venue, I think. And now, to be fair, there's a lot of different places. Where we started, the first gig we did was Rooty Fruity, which was a kind of juice bar around the Custard Factory, just by the outside pool kind of thing. So you had that big bit in the middle, and I think it's some restaurant or something now. And so we're doing events monthly there as well as the Hare and Hound, so we're alternating with the two. And we were doing sound system nights and band nights. We started alternating in Rooty Fruity, and that was really nice because it was all night till the morning, which was nice. And because it was in city centre, it always got really busy. People came through from all the bouncers ended up there at the end of the night, and from other clubs and stuff. So it was a really nice little hub thing, even though it had its own issues in that, obviously for being a late night kind of city centre venue is always a bit. But I think that was good memories from there because it was really we bring down the sound system, bringing everything, and that was really when it felt like it was really bubbling and starting off and starting to materialise a bit more, you know what I mean, from before.
Was it there, something? That's great.
What were people's perceptions when you told them that you were from France?
Yeah, I think generally what was kind of an advantage moving to England is that I already spoke English, and so compared to a lot of people that also came from France, I had that kind of little head start. That meant it was a lot easier for me to kind of communicate with people and hence kind of get involved a bit more easily. So a lot of times people don't necessarily know I'm French, and sometimes surprised. And it's with the European thing now, it's changed a bit since Brexit, but it was kind of Europe, and everyone was kind of happy with that. And the most I got when people found out I was French originally was a football talk, because you may or may not know, in '98 France were the champions of the world. They beat Brazil 3-0, and then I came to England, and anytime people you said you were French, they were like, you beat Brazil and all this. I was like, well, yeah, it wasn't me personally, but I did watch it. And then a couple of years later, they became champions of Europe as well. So they had both titles at the same time for a little while. So yeah, that was back in the day. And yeah, I mean, I think now, like, you know, people don't always clock that I'm French. Sometimes they notice I'm foreign, but not necessarily where I'm from. And I do get, you know, things like, oh, I didn't think you were French. You're not really like them, you know what I mean? Which I think most people get, like, once, you know. And yeah, so I think overall people see me as, like, especially now because I'm involved with the community quite a lot. We're doing these events and all this. A lot of people just see me as, like, you know, Mosley person kind of thing. And but yeah, I am French. It's true.
What are your thoughts on Brexit?
Do you really want to know my thoughts on it? Yeah, basically, it's totally absurd. It's really weird when you go anywhere else in the world, in fact, not just Europe. And people go, oh, you're from England, so what is this Brexit thing about? You know, why are they doing it? And nobody seems to understand why you'd basically isolate yourself from a good kind of structure for nothing. Like, there's no evident kind of benefit for anybody, which makes it all very suspicious in the fact that it's been like that the information that was given to people in order to vote was totally wrong and was admitted to being lies the next day, etc. It all feels like totally weird thing, and especially when you go back to France and stuff like that, and people are just completely incredulous that, you know, first world country with a democracy in it that's supposed to be kind of, you know, quite a reasonable, you know what I mean, if it was some kind of dictator that was like, yeah, let's just like leave this thing and let's do our own thing, and, you know, this is like a country that's seen as, you know, one of the kind of reasonable countries in the world, and they're just going on this kind of mass suicide thing, which is really strange. But what's stranger is just to see how people kind of got behind that and they're still trying to justify it in some ways, or certain people still try to justify it, going, nah man, we've got, I don't know, curvy bananas or something, or straight bananas, I don't know which one. And, you know, little details like that, or complaining about what this nation or whatever that come here and take these jobs, and or live in, like, one guy was telling me, I work in housing, and all these like foreigners live in this like house, and there's like 100 of them in this house, and the house is in a state. And I was like, yeah, but, you know, is Brexit going to solve this? So, and yeah, what we were saying earlier is that, like, I never really felt any hostility towards me being French. You know, obviously apart from the odd football comment, but it's not really, you know, not in a bad way. Whereas, yeah, since Brexit, you know what I mean, where people are a bit more like, you know, so if you're not happy, just go home. You know what I mean? Which is kind of funny because I consider this to be my home. I'm, you know, like, go back to France is a different thing now because I don't know that many people. You know, it's a really different experience. But I was never asked. This is one thing that I find quite dramatic, really, is that nobody ever asked me to give my voice on this referendum, and I'm one of the most affected people by it because I am a European living in England, you know what I mean? And it was never an issue. I didn't have to get a visa. I didn't have to do anything. I can go up and down however I please. I can bring stuff over, take it back. Just happy life. And they've just done a contract now on my phone contract. I can call for the same, like, as I can use my minutes and my data all over Europe for no extra charge. And that's just happened like a year before the Brexit is supposed to happen, so I don't know what's going to happen there. But for about 16 years, 17 years of my life, I've been waiting for this contract where you can just call, because I'm like, it's the same company, it's the same phone, it's the same country pretty much, it's Europe, you know what I mean? And finally, they've made that European move just before they're about to leave Europe, so it's very frustrating. Yeah. It's just a little detail, but it is like that kind of stuff that you think, you know, how much are things going to change? You know, people go, oh, you'll be all right, you'll be allowed to stay. And you think, yeah, okay, I'll be allowed, but will I want to stay in a country that's in recession if it's back like the 80s with, like, you know what I mean, just misery and crime everywhere? You know what I mean? I ain't staying. I can go to 27 other countries. You know what I mean? So.
How has Brexit has Brexit changed your position on Birmingham?
Not really. as such, like, I still, to be fair, I don't actually really believe that it's going to go through. I think, you know, I don't know, man. Maybe it's just the information that's being pushed at me by the various algorithms that kind of, you know, confirm my kind of ideas. But it really seems like at some point someone's going to go, look, this is not working. I mean, this woman, Theresa May, like, goes to, every time she goes to a negotiation, she goes, yeah, I want all of this. And they go, no, you can't have that. You need to sort this out. And then she comes home going, oh, yeah, man, the European people, they're really nasty to me, man. They don't want to give me everything for nothing. And you're like, yeah, but you've agreed a contract, you know, and part of the contract is that when you leave, you have to give this money to pay back all the good stuff you've been having. You know, you're going to need to pay that. You know what I mean? And I don't know, just the whole thing seems so absurd that I really think that, you know, it can't go that far, you know. I think it's, you know, people are going to realise that it was all a big joke and a massive waste of time and money. Like, I went back to France the other day. Each euro cost me 90p, so it's like almost pound for pound, you know what I mean? Well, pound for euro. Whereas when I came here, or when the euro first came in, it was like 60p. So everything's like 50% more expensive now when you go back to Europe. And with my little pounds I earn in England, man, you know what I mean? I can't really, you know, just become really poor all of a sudden, you know what I mean? You've got no buying power. And so just little things like that, and just the fact that nothing's progressed since the beginning. Everybody's just like infighting and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it's in nobody's interest at all. So I still kind of, you know, just holding fire. I haven't tried to apply for citizenship or anything like that. I'm not really interested, because right now I've got every right to be here, and you know, and I'm a member of the community, you know. It's like I'm well involved, so you know, this is my place.
How connected do you feel to Birmingham?
I feel really connected to Birmingham. Like, I feel like you know, it is, you know, I'm really proud of it. In a way, it's kind of funny because people always criticise Birmingham, and even Brummies, like, they'll go, oh yeah, there's this and this, and blah, blah, blah. They're always moaning. But as soon as someone from outside of Birmingham starts saying, oh yeah, Birmingham, I heard it's a bit shit, and Brummies will go, no, it's wicked, it's really good, there's loads of fun to be had, and there's all this stuff and all this culture, and yeah, I do think it's a great place. And from, you know, also from, you know, being involved with the music scene, and I've always like pushed it as like Birmingham music, you know what I mean? And I think that's kind of important, because it's you know, this is actually where, although, you know, some of the musicians I work with will all be from different places, and obviously I'm not from here as such, like, I still feel like this is what brought us together, and this is what we're actually, you know, what is actually the inspiration behind all the music, as well as all our, you know, respective journeys. Like, the fact that we all met here and built this thing here, that's, you know, it's a big thing.
Do you have any other family living in Birmingham?
Not really. My best friend from school moved to England at the same time, you know, in the same circumstances, and he lives in Manchester now. So we're still in touch, because he married a girl from Selly Oak, so his parents-in-law are in Selly Oak, so he comes a lot here. But I suppose that's the closest to kind of, you know, family that I've got here. But you know, otherwise it's all a big family, innit? But yeah, in terms of French family, that's it.
What you can call
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, Robin.
You're very welcome. Thank you for yours.